This had to be particularly terrifying to experience. When I was very small, my mum and dad had a very physical ghost experience. The metal-framed beds of the time had large, sturdy wooden headboards. My parents were no strangers to spooky phenomena, but their headboard began to receive very scary knockings randomly. These sounded just like the knocking of a human fist, as it would knocking on a door. The headboard was against the wall, so no real space for a living human to make this happen. They put up with it for a while, not really knowing what to do about it, but the whole thing had to be terrifying, especially for my mum. One night, though, my dad had been out for the night, and my mum had gone to bed. As she was lying there, the knocking started. Being on her own made the fear even more intense, and the rate of the raps seemed to know this, and repeated mockingly. Frozen with fear, and unable to move, and becoming more hysterical with every knock, she heard my dad coming in the front door. She immediately screamed his name, and he came running up the stairs. When she explained what had been going on, in temper, he sawed off the headboard. I don't know what he did with it that night. I imagine it was thrown outside. I do know, though, that it eventually went to live in my aunt and uncle's coal house as a board to stop the coal from spilling out of the door. When my aunt found out the reason the headboard had been cut off from my sister, however, she was too scared to go and get her coal. This is my own experience that started when I was a child. I remember clearly the very first time. I was on the back of my dad's motorbike, and we were riding through our village. As we traveled under a bridge that was owned by the coal mine for its locomotives, I heard a voice very gently say my name. It was a woman's voice, and it sounded very beautiful and calming. I would go as far as to say angelic. There was no doubt in my mind that I had heard it, and I looked around as best I could, but could see no one. My dad died when I was 9, so it had to be when I was 7 to 9 years old, but I can't say exactly when. This wasn't the only time I heard the voice, though. This happened to me at various times over the years, and it was always the same angelic voice, just almost whispering my name. There was never anything added, and was always the same. It only seemed to happen when my mind was far away, or when I was busy. It never frightened me, as it was such a gentle sound. The last time I heard it, I was in my mid-20s, and I remember exactly where I was. I was busy in my garden, and when I heard it, I stopped in my tracks and looked around, but as usual, there was no one. I know that this isn't a scary story as such, but paranormal nonetheless. The sad part is, I'm in my mid-50s now, so haven't heard that beautiful voice for 30 years or so, and don't know if I ever will again. This was another physical ghost event that happened to us in the 70s. At that time, for some reason, we had a tall larder kitchen unit standing on our landing at the top of the stairs. Unfortunately, right next to my bedroom door. This night, we were all tucked up in our beds, and the door of that unit began opening and closing on its own. The fasteners on the cupboard doors back then had a mechanism that made a loud and very definite click. There was no way for that click to happen for anything other than someone physically opening and closing it. This went on for quite a while. Everyone in my family had heard it, although it was mentioned that it could have been the old frustration game that was sat on top of that unit. I was the closest to it, though, and I'm certain it was the click of the door catch. It would have taken me only a few steps to walk around my bedroom door and witness this, but no way would I do that. I was petrified by the sound, and I always imagined the worst, although it could have been the spirit of a playful person. In my mind, it was something much more horrible. Whatever it was, though, the sound was very menacing. It might sound strange to a listener of this that my parents didn't immediately attend, but at that time there were so many things happening on a regular basis that I think it just became part of our normality. In any case, they probably knew that when it stopped, I would be straight in their bed with them, as usual, and my sisters had each other. This was an event that was experienced by my dad, also sometime in the 1970s. He and my mam had had an argument one night. We were not privy to what it was about, but my dad was to spend the night sleeping on the couch in the living room. He set himself up with 2 pillows, one for his head and the other for his feet, and settled himself ready for sleep. I believe he had dozed off when suddenly the pillow beneath his feet was pulled away and onto the floor. He picked it up and replaced it, then settled back down. I can only guess what he was thinking, as neither of my parents are this side of life any longer. I would imagine he blamed his own mind, or something not supernatural anyway. But, as he lay intending to go back to sleep, the pillow under his head was suddenly and forcefully whipped away in similar fashion to the first. This time, though, he was fully aware that something had pulled that pillow from under his head. With that, he swallowed his pride and went upstairs to bed. I really don't blame him, but at the time, we all found this pretty funny, as he was a fearless man. How do you fight something that isn't visible, though, I suppose?